This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Eben Jansen. The show is live. It's broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube right now. Our whole show is then available on demand on our YouTube channel. If you've missed it, or even if you've missed a little segment of it, you can watch it back. On the show today, we'll look at the arguments for and against euthanasia or mercy killings here in South Africa, and we'll have both protagonists with us, one in Cape Town, the other in the capital, Pretoria. Then the South African of the Year Awards ceremony takes place next month. We'll have a look at that, and we'll get an update from the Farnham Commission of Inquiry. Then we'll look at women in science as we continue to celebrate Women's Month here in South Africa. But first, let's go to Katrine, who gives us the news of the day.
Well, hello and welcome to Newsroom. I'm Katrine Malan, and let's take a look at the top stories this morning. EFF leader Julius Malema's lawyers are expected to argue in court today why a provisional sequestration order against him should not be made final. Malema was initially charged for tax evasion amounting to 16 million rand plus interest for failing to submit tax returns between 2006 and 2010. A final sequestration order would affect Malema's political career, as he would no longer be allowed to serve as a member of parliament. Meanwhile, the ANC-aligned MK Military Veterans Association has declared war on the EFF. This follows an incident last week when EFF MPs disrupted a question session with President Jacob Zuma. ANC Secretary-General Gwede Mantashe has also spoken about the incident.
Once you allow anarchy and you do nothing, you are emboldening anarchy. And anarchy doesn't get better because you are soft on it. When you deal with anarchy, your hand must be tight and strong. If it's not, you are going to have it repeated over and over and worsening every day.
The Democratic Republic of Congo has confirmed its first 2 cases of Ebola this year, but claimed they were unrelated to the epidemic raging in 4 countries of West Africa. In other developments, Sierra Leone's parliament has made the harboring of Ebola victims a crime punishable by 2 years jail. The decision came as the World Health Organization warned that the hiding of victims has concealed the true scale of the epidemic. It's now killed 1,427 people across West Africa. Then moving to the United States, authorities in Ferguson, Missouri are bracing for a possible flare-up of rioting ahead of the funeral of Michael Brown later today. The shooting of the 18-year-old black youth by a white police officer led to more than a week of unrest and drew global attention to race relations in the United States. The White House says 3 presidential aides will attend Brown's funeral. Then still in the U.S., Napa Governor Jerry Brown has declared a state of emergency for part of California's wine country hard hit by a large earthquake yesterday. Authorities are picking up the pieces after the region's biggest earthquake in 25 years injured more than 100 people. It damaged buildings and caused power and water outages around the town of Napa. Now that clip and more on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Katrine. Maybe we should have a look at more earthquakes. It seems to be an increasing phenomenon around the world. But today, the issue of euthanasia or mercy killing is back in the public arena following the death of Inkatha Freedom Party Member of Parliament, Dr. Mario Oriani Ambrosini. Now, Ambrosini committed suicide on August 16 this year at the age of 53, despite earlier media reports of his death having been the result of terminal lung cancer. His family say he decided to end his own life in order to put an end to his long battle or his long suffering. He was in the final stages of terminal lung cancer. Ambrosini's death follows calls from Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu last month for government to consider its laws on assisted dying. South African law currently prohibits assisted dying, and the same view is shared by pro-life organisations here in South Africa. campaign group Dignity Dreams has revealed plans to take the debate over legalising assisted suicide to the Constitutional Court. Now, from Cape Town, we are joined by Taryn Hodgson, the international coordinator of the Christian Action Network, and then in Pretoria from Dignity Dreams, we have Sandra Miller this morning. Good morning, ladies. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having us.
Taryn, if I can start with you in Cape Town. You're from the, if I just get it right, you're from the Christian Action Network, that's correct, and you are pro-life, as it were. Let's hear your opinion on euthanasia or assisted killing, death, dying, as it's known. Thank you.
Yes, well, we believe there's a big moral divide between letting someone die and making someone die. The first one is letting nature take its course, whereas the second one is murder. It's taking of a judicially innocent life. And so I think one also then needs to make the distinction between voluntary and involuntary euthanasia. And we'd say there's a big slippery slope created. As soon as you legalise voluntary euthanasia, it leads to many cases of involuntary euthanasia.
Sandra, let's go to you in Pretoria. What are your views on that, especially this slippery slope that Taryn's talking about?
Thank you very much, Eben. Thanks, Taryn. It's very hard to talk about slippery slopes when you've seen somebody suffer, when somebody is in such incredible pain, day in, day out, they have no dignity, they have no life. It's hard for me to see this as any sort of murder, as Taryn put it, or taking of a life. I think that we have to exercise compassion. We really do.
Taryn, let's come back to you. You spoke about the moral issues around ending one's life prematurely, but what I want to ask you, whose morals? What morals are you talking about?
Yes, well, we always need to remember that all law is enforcing somebody's moral values. Even the law against murder is a moral value. It's saying that a life is worth something, that it's valuable, and but one always has to consider the fact that you're always going to be enforcing somebody's moral values. And the only objective moral standard that we can have is to look at God's character. So, and as a Christian organisation, we support the fact that life is a gift, and every life is made in the image of God, and therefore every life should be protected and valued.
What about those that do not believe in your Christian nativity story, believe in something else, or who don't believe in a God at all? Who are we then to prescribe to these people?
Well, again, all law is enforcing somebody's moral values. So we already have common law, which has its roots in Christianity. And in fact, Christians have always supported the medical profession. Think of Florence Nightingale, who came up with the foundations for modern practices of nursing, and then also hospice associations who've always provided compassion and care for those who are terminally ill. And so we certainly support giving people who are suffering the compassion and support and help that they need.
You say, on the other hand, Sandra, that what some of these people need to do is to die, and they can make that decision for themselves.
I think I hear you, Taryn. I hear that it's against the law. I hear that there are places like hospice, and I applaud that. I applaud your point of view, and I applaud people like hospice. But, when it comes to morals, when you speak about people's morals, I think that we're talking about a very, very personal choice. And I think when somebody like this gentleman who took his life, I don't think that was taken easily. I don't think that was taken without knowing the pain he was leaving his family in. But if you think of the desperation, of the desperate situation he was in at that moment, tell me, who are we to say that we must just prolong his life against his best wishes? Do we not have a moral obligation to people like that as well?
Sandra, do you find it offensive? Do you find it offensive that everyone is painted with the same moral brush in this case?
No, I don't. But I do understand that. I do understand it's against the law, and I do understand Taryn is from a Christian network, and I do applaud that. But I also think, life is not that grey and white. And if I just think that we don't have the right to judge these people. We really do not. It's not fair.
Taryn, if I can come to you in Cape Town,
yes.
What do you make of the call by Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, who's a religious and a moral man? He supports the call for people to be allowed to make this choice for themselves.
Well, Sandra has raised some very important issues, and I certainly think that those who are experiencing depression need to have the love and care and support, and that often needs to be treated with medicine as well. So I think, and what doctors have often pointed out, in fact, Doctors for Life pointed out in a recent press release, that many patients who are suffering a terminal illness and going through a lot of pain, often their depression is not diagnosed. And so I think doctors need to look at if a patient is suffering depression and deal with both the depression and the pain.
The Oscar trial showed us that pretty much everybody in the world today suffers from some sort of depression in some sort of way. You haven't answered the question. But what is your response to Archbishop Emeritus Tutu asking for us to rethink the law on euthanasia?
Well, Tutu was responding to a very valid concern that Nelson Mandela's life was artificially prolonged for an extended time, and I'd have to agree with him on that and say that if someone just artificially prolonging their life with machines is not necessary. We're not against that. If someone wants to just die and have that life support taken off, then that's fine. But there's the problem with Tutu's statements, and I examined his statements very thoroughly, is that it can fuel prejudice against the elderly, the disabled, and the dying. Anyone who people may be tempted to think as a burden to society. And they may even begin to think of themselves as a burden to society. And I think that's very dangerous. I think we need to be careful of seeing those who may be termed undesirable as we believe they are valuable.
Sandra, what are your views on that? Is this dangerous?
Eben, listen to me. Treating somebody who's maybe down and feels down, depressed, is not going to make them feel physically better. You can have as many tablets to take that feeling away. The fact of the matter is, what about their quality of life? What right do we as human beings have to allow somebody's quality of life to be one of pain, to be one of suffering? What right do we have? Is there no compassion in us? Is there no compassion in us? It's not fair. It's just not fair.
You're going to go to the Constitutional Court, am I right, Sandra?
No. Eben, sorry, I wanted to interject. I'm not going to the Constitutional Court. We are not a charity that's fighting for this. I was invited as a guest. Perhaps you have us confused with another body, but whoever they are,
the research
they have
is
full support.
obviously wrong.
It's fine.
Taryn?
Yes.
You believe that there should be a right to life. Surely in some cases there should be a right to die with dignity.
Yes, and again, there's a huge moral divide between allowing someone to die and letting nature take its course and making someone die. You see, what's happened in Holland is, in fact, Dr. Theo Boer, who's a professor of ethics, has recently made a press statement in connection with Lord Falconer's bill in Britain, which has been debated very recently. He said that he's made a terrible mistake. He was terribly wrong in supporting euthanasia. He's seen how assisted suicide has become a normal procedure. And this is exactly what happens with legalizing voluntary euthanasia, is that it becomes a normal procedure. People see it as an easy way out.
Shouldn't it be a normal procedure if you choose to end your life?
No, we need to protect our country from going down that slippery slope.
Who are we protecting?
Belgium, one study.
The country is a big place. Who are we protecting? If somebody makes that choice as the individual, which is enshrined in the Constitution, surely we should assist that.
In Holland, the elderly have to have a little tag on their arm saying, "Please treat me." They think they're scared of being euthanized.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened in Belgium. 100 nurses admitted to euthanizing patients without their consent, and that is very scary.
That is the other side of the coin. Final remarks belong to you, Sandra Miller from Dignity Dreams. What are your views on that?
Eben, I don't see how anybody can view this as the easy way out. It's not the easy way out. I'm sure that once somebody has reached that stage, the desperation, the pain, the sense of hopelessness must be overwhelming. It's not an easy choice.
Well, thank you very much. That it is not. It is not an easy choice, and it's not an easy discussion to have. Thank you very much for joining us. Dignity Dreams in Pretoria, Sandra Miller, and from Cape Town, Taryn Hodgson, who's the International Coordinator of the Christian Action Network. Thank you, ladies, for joining us and having this conversation with us this morning. Thank you once again. Now let's take a quick look what's happening on social media. What are you talking about on this Monday morning? At SABC Newsroom says, "I'm against it personally for religious reasons, but respect others' rights to do it." That from Slick. Journey to Freedom says, at SABC Newsroom, euthanasia should be allowed, especially in a democratic country. One should have the option to end their suffering. And who decides how long you have to live, what suffering? Those are the grey areas that our guests have been talking about, and it becomes very dangerous. Jero A. Piana says, the action, suicide of Robin Williams is another example that recommends the reasonable legalization of euthanasia. I don't think hanging yourself qualifies as euthanasia, my friend. Family and Life says, the very existence of the euthanasia laws turns assisted suicide from a last resort into a normal procedure. Should it or should it not be a normal procedure then, if we live in a open society? John Hudson says, what if society got to decide when you became irrelevant, or decide if you were ever relevant to begin with? They do. Well, we've had that before. It's called the autocracies of our history. Oliver says, wonder how long until savvy event planners start advertising going away parties at assisted suicide clinics. Now that would be something completely against the discussion point that we had this morning. What are your views on euthanasia? Let's keep the conversation going on at SABC Newsroom. That's on our page. Of course, it goes on throughout the rest of the Net Environment one. Let's take a quick look at what's happening around the world. It's Monday morning. I'm sure. Let's go down under. The Australian says, looking at the situation in Iraq today, where the Abbott government is actively considering an extended military role for Australia in the country, and is encouraging the US to increase its military involvement there and possibly in Syria. Wow, that's big from the Aussies. Then the Times in Europe says, new analysis casts a doubt on the authenticity of the video in which American James Foley was killed, suggesting the video was probably staged with a murder happening off camera. I don't know about that. What do you think? And you'll also see a picture of British actor and film director Sir Richard Attenborough there, and on the front page of the Daily Mail. He died yesterday at the age of 90. May he rest in peace. Today we pay tribute to the veteran British actor and film director Richard Attenborough, who died at the age of 90 yesterday. Lord Attenborough was one of Britain's leading actors during the middle of the century, that's the previous century, becoming a highly successful director later on. His best-known films as an actor included Brighton Rock, The Great Escape, and, of course, who can forget Jurassic Park. Let's take a look at the famous T-Rex scene from that film.
Where's the goat?
Zoom into Africa. This is Sierra Leone. The president is Mr. Ernest Bai Koroma. Sierra Leone got independent from the United Kingdom on 27 April in 1961. The population is more than 6 million people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is Leone.
Healthy food is not always the cheapest food option. And so making the healthy choices, the easier choices, remain a health challenge for South African children.
Bipolar disorder is said to affect 1 in 100 people.
Low back pain, the most common spinal disorder, affects about 8 out of 10 people at some point in their lives.
Back pain persists for more than a week or two. Seek advice.
I'm Dr. Cyril Mutau. Watch Health Talk every Saturday on SABC.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom here on SABC News. To celebrate 20 years of democracy, the inaugural South African of the Year Awards will be on the 6th of September to pay tribute to extraordinary South Africans who all inspire and build towards a better future for all of us in this country. Now, to tell us more about the awards, we are joined today by the Editor-in-Chief of The New Age, Mr. Muhsin Williams. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Eben. Thanks for having me.
There's so many great people in this country, and we do such a lot of great things in this country, but I sometimes get the sense that in the media we like to portray the opposite of that. Is that accurate?
Look, it's true, of course, bad news, as they say, sell, but I think we have a tendency in the media to lack a bit of balance when it comes to, showing our society in its entirety.
Yeah.
There's bad things happening in our society, and there are very good things. And the South African of the Year Awards is really about trying to celebrate the people who are actually doing those good things, making a difference in the lives of ordinary South Africans. And I think the idea really is to recognize them and celebrate them.
When we talk about the South African of the Year Awards, it is is it a triumph of the human spirit, or is it just doing extraordinary stuff that puts South Africa on the map?
Yeah, it's both. It's really about, look, I think sometimes we depress ourselves. As you say, the news sometimes is so overwhelmingly bad that, a form of depression sets in when we look at the newspaper columns and read the headlines. And I think the idea is really to see, to South Africans say, man, there are good things happening, and firstly, recognize these people who are actually doing extraordinary things, going to extraordinary lengths, sometimes unsung, not recognized in trying to improve the lives of ordinary South Africans. Secondly, is it possible then for us as ordinary South Africans to emulate them, so that we can also make our contribution in the spirit of Ubuntu, in the spirit of Nelson Mandela, we need to make a difference in the lives of our fellow South Africans.
And probably the most important part of making that difference for us is to create the heroes, to put the heroes on the soapboxes, to create the role models that not only the youth but men like myself can still look up to and aspire to.
Exactly. Yeah. So so on the 6th, as you say, on the 6th of September, we will announce the winners of the different in the different categories, and there are quite a number of categories. It's the first time that that so many different, there are quite a lot of awards, but it's the first time that there are so many categories under one umbrella that will be recognized in one evening at a special gala event at the Sandton Convention Centre on Saturday the 6th.
The selection process, that'll be the first thing that people obviously look at is, how could you pick this one, how could you pick that one? That's unfortunately how we think in South Africa.
We've tried to have an independent nomination process. Initially it was put together by quite a number of preeminent editors, people like Matata Tsedu, who is the executive director of Sunday, former editor of City Press, Jovial Rantau, Sunday independent editor, Paula Frey, a former editor of the Saturday Star, Mike Soluma, who was the editor here at the SABC, myself, Yusuf Abramji, of course, at Prime Media. They all convened a panel to put the nominations list together, and it was done separately. Then there was a public voting process as far as the nominations were concerned, and now the process has started to confirm the winners in the different categories. Again, it's a three-pronged process where the nomination committees will be voting, a special peer group panel will be voting, and our viewers of ANN7 will be voting. So far, we have had 300,000 votes.
Wow,
quite staggering. It ends on Wednesday, and I think we'll probably reach a target of 500,000 votes. There's been quite a very good public participation in the process. It's all being audited by KPMG, and a bit like the Oscars on the night, for the first time, we will know who the winners are once the
amazing.
Envelope is opened up.
The integrity of the event looks beyond reproach, and there's public participation. But I want to ask you, we do see these events pop up occasionally. Where do you see this event, or where would you like to see this event in 10 years' time?
Well, we hope to do it annually now. It's our first one this year. It's an inaugural event. As you know, it takes quite a lot of logistical support and quite a lot of resources to put something like this together. So we'll see. But, if you have to ask me, yes, we will have the second one next year. And it will hopefully grow into the premier South African awards kind of programming.
It is indeed a platform that I think that the country needs. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Muhsin Williams, of course, ANN7's Group Chief Editor-in-Chief and Editor of the New Age, and it is very much an initiative that's supported by your organisation. Thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me
today. Well, what do you think of the South African of the Awards, of the Year Awards? I think it's a fantastic initiative. It's something that we really, really need. At SABC Newsroom is where you can send your contribution. Of course, today we're still talking about Ebola, and that in itself is scary. 2 new cases of Ebola confirmed in the DRC. Medical Monday, #health. That is very concerning indeed. It means that the virus is still on the move here on the African continent. Let's hope that the trials for the drug is expedited a little bit. Lawyer says Ebola has now reached our neighbors, DRC. Zambia, are you ready? Of course not, he says with a little bit of sarcasm. It is very concerning. Now, the debate is raging on whether the Farlam Commission of Inquiry should embark on a second phase probing the 2012 Marikana unrest or not. Advocate Dalim Mpofu, representing hundreds of injured and arrested Lonmin miners, told the inquiry's public hearings last week that reasons on the underlying causes of the shooting in Marikana should be separate and a different inquiry should be held for that. The second phase of the inquiry was scheduled to investigate the socio-economic and political causes of the Marikana violence. Demisa Nsebeza, for the families of the killed miners, also suggested that after concluding its work, the Farlam Commission should perhaps recommend that certain aspects be dealt with by another inquiry. Well, for an update, let's cross to our reporter, Nozintombi Mea. Well, she is with a guest. Very good morning to you, Nozintombi. Just set the scene for us and then you carry on with the interview.
Well, a very good morning to you, Eben. As you rightly said in your introduction, Phase 2 is a very important part of the Commission's work. Now, you understand that Phase 2 will look at the issues of the socio-economic conditions of the miners along that Marikana belt. And why this is important is that it will tell us exactly what led to the miners going on the strike protest in the first place and looking to get 12,500 and looking to improve their housing allowances. You remember that many of the miners are living in some of the hostel communities. Some of them are living in shacks. So the living conditions are really quite dire. And with me today, I do have the Marikana spokesperson. His name is Puti Sisati. And he's going to give us just a little bit more indication about going forward what is likely to happen about Phase 2 and how long the Commission really will be expected to continue on for. A very good morning to you, Mr. Puti Sisati. Just tell us really, how long are we expecting that the Commission will still continue? We do know that it's been 18 months already of the Commission proceedings.
Morning, Tombi. In terms of the terms of reference, remember we got the last extension, which states that by the 30th of September, we have to be done with the hearings. And immediately thereafter, it's a 6-week time for report writing. You see, that is what's going to happen. Remember, we come a long way. We have done 276 days, of successful hearings, and we have completed 47 witnesses, and amongst them, there were high-profile witnesses. Our deputy president came and gave testimony, former minister of police, and the national commissioner. You see, now that's what's going to happen.
Puti, let's talk about Phase 2. We saw that there were some submissions last week after Lonmin put forth an application to have Phase 2 scrapped. Just give us an indication, why is Phase 2 so important really in the proceedings?
I think for now, Tombi, remember, the judge will have to make a pronouncement, I think the best thing we can do for now is to wait for the judge and hear what he's going to say. It's still, basically, let's say it's still sub judice, Now, we cannot comment much on that. Let's allow the judge, to make its ruling.
Now, going back to the processes, a lot of our viewers have been questioning, really. It's been 18 months so far. Is there any headway that's been made with the particular commission?
Look, we are succeeding with the work that we are doing, and we are happy with that, because we have never had a problem with witnesses. Witnesses have came, there was no witness who was forced, to come. Whenever they are called, they heed to the call, and they come, they give their testimony, So far, all we can say is that the work is continuing correctly.
And give us an indication of the processes that are likely to happen once the 30th of September comes around. What's the processes? Are we expecting to see any final closing arguments? Take me through that process.
Yes, look, there will be time for final closing arguments, and immediately thereafter, I repeat, it will be time where the commissioners, apply their mind to all the facts that have been brought to the commission, and they start with their report writing. Remember, I said it will be 6 weeks for them to do report writing, and immediately thereafter, we will take the report to the president.
Is there likely to be an extension once, come the 30th of September, is there likely to be a further extension? Because London hasn't quite completed their list of witnesses yet, and we do know that we're expecting quite a few more minors to be on the stand this week. Is there likely to be a call for an extension or an extension?
No, look, in terms of our terms of reference, they are very clear, And the program that is designed by the evidence leaders, I was just looking at it, we are likely to meet our deadline, because they have planned that around the 15th of next month, the 12th of next month, they would be done with all witnesses, you see. Now, it would look like we are going to meet the deadline, and let's hold it just like that, so.
That's great. Thank you so much, Phuthi Sitati. That was Phuthi Sitati. He is the Farlam Commission spokesperson, just giving us an indication of the processes and systems that are expected to unfold once the commission is nearing its completion phase. But just to give you a reminder of what's expected to happen this week, we do know that Minister Susan Shabanga, who is now a minister in the presidency, who was then a Minister of Minerals and Resources, she is expected to take the witness stand tomorrow. So her testimony certainly will be expected to be an explosive testimony, with some of the legal teams expected to really tear into her involvement of what happened in 2012. And going forward, we do know that some of the minors that were on the copy will also get an opportunity to share their testimony with the Farlam Commission going forward this week. Back to you, Eben.
Thank you very much. Ntombini Mia is live outside the Farlam Commission in Centurion. She'll be there for the rest of the week, and she'll keep you updated on all of our shows and platforms, digital and on air, how things develop this week. Should be an interesting week. But let's take a quick look at what's on our Facebook page, our Newsroom Facebook page, that is. Today you will see there that a British medical worker has been flown from West Africa after becoming the first Briton infected in an Ebola epidemic. This is a separate new outbreak of the disease was detected in the Democratic Republic of the Congo over the weekend. You'll also see there that Al-Qaeda-linked militants in Syria have freed an American writer missing since 2012 following what officials said were efforts by the Gulf Arab state of Qatar to win his release, and that tributes are pouring in for British actor, film director Sir Richard Attenborough, who died yesterday at the age of 90. You can find all of these stories and more on our Newsroom Facebook page. It's really a non-stop shop if you want to know what is happening today. We're going to take a short commercial break. We'll be back with more after this.
Malibongwe igama lamakhosikazi.
The shortage of nurses places those nurses who are working under such pressure.
To have one registered nurse looking after a ward full of patients, of over 40 patients, is unreasonable.
But Africa has made tremendous progress. In the year 2012, there were only 50,000 children. 50,000 children too many, but only 50,000 children that died of measles in the whole of Africa, compared to 330,000 in the year 2000.
For all your health issues, join Dr. Sello every Saturday, 9 to 10 a.m. CAT.
Well, hello and welcome back. You're with Newsroom on SABC News. Let's take a look at the top stories this morning. EFF leader Julius Malema's lawyers are expected to argue in court today why a provisional sequestration order against him should not be made final. Malema was initially charged for tax evasion amounting to 16 million rand, plus interest for failing to submit tax returns between 2006 and 2010. A final sequestration order would affect Malema's political career, as he would no longer be allowed to serve as a member of parliament. The Democratic Republic of Congo has confirmed its first 2 cases of Ebola this year, but claimed that they were unrelated to the epidemic raging in 4 countries of West Africa. In other developments, the Sierra Leone's parliament has made the harbouring of Ebola victims a crime punishable by 2 years jail. The decision came as the World Health Organization warned that the hiding of victims has concealed the true scale of the epidemic. It's now killed 1,427 people across West Africa. Then in the U.S., Napa, Governor Jerry Brown has declared a state of emergency for part of California's wine country hard hit by a large earthquake yesterday. Authorities are picking up the pieces after the region's biggest quake in 25 years injured more than 100 people. It damaged buildings and caused power and water outages around the town of Napa. It's that clip and more on our Newsroom Facebook page. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Eben, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Katrina. Very good morning once again if you've just joined us. Now, last week, the name James Foley sent shockwaves throughout the world. This after the Islamic State, that's an organization in Iraq and Syria, posted a video on YouTube that showed the beheading of Foley, an American journalist who was kidnapped in Syria nearly 2 years ago. YouTube later took down the 4-minute, 40-second video. However, the same could not be said for Twitter, as the video spread like wildfire. The use of social media as an instrument of war is nothing new, but has recently become more and more common. Last month, we brought you the shocking truths behind social media campaigns run on Twitter during the ongoing conflict in Gaza. Well, today we look at IS, the militant group behind last week's hashtag James Foley. Now, here joining me to talk about this is Tonya Kure, who's the Managing Director of Roy Africa. Morning, Tonya. Nice to have you back with us, as always.
Good morning, Eben. It's always nice to be here.
Just give us the backstory as to what happened last week.
Well, I mean, we saw, like you said earlier, about the YouTube videos actually where it broke, the James Foley beheading, and then it spread like wildfire on Twitter. But very soon, the video stopped and the stills started trending. I think the graphic nature of the content, like with many things we've seen, people tend not to want to see it. So it moved to a still situation, and then we had warnings put out by various organisations from the States and from the UK saying it would be a criminal offence to retweet or repost this video. So that clamped down even further. And then we had certain Twitter accounts shut down. And then we had things like Ask Islam trend, Ask Islamic State trend on Twitter, where you could ask questions to ISIS. That was then, there's almost an element of humour. Yeah. People started saying, what do you think about pedestrianising Norwich City to ask Islamic State, you know? So we had all sorts of varieties of emotion, but generally the flooding of grief, of people sending their condolences and people being absolutely horrified about what had happened were the main features in social networks across the world.
How did they stop this kind of thing? Let's talk about how they stopped this thing from spreading and how all of that then infringes on our rights as the basic user.
You know, Twitter is an interesting beast because they always divorce themselves from the sentiment.
Yes.
So what Eben and Tanya have to say to each other is absolutely nothing to do with Twitter. They are merely the platform that allows you to host it. But in this instance, all of a sudden we started seeing these Twitter handles being shut down. And as fast as they shut down, new ones would pop up. And as fast as they popped up, they'd get shut down too. So what we have found is that ISIS moved their social media drive, propaganda campaign, whatever you want to call it, into other social networks. I think there was one called Diaspora, which is a closed network group. So here you ended up having people being able to have a conversation without the danger of being shut down.
Yeah. Just to look at the numbers that you've brought in, we've got a couple of the big stories or the big goings-on, social media, and also we've got the Ice Bucket Challenge, Foley versus the Blackout, ISIS and Hamas, and just run us through us and tell us what's happening on these graphs.
Okay, so Eben, these are taken from over 200 million platforms across the world, right? So if you have a look at the top right, these are the big stories in the past week. And what I found so interesting is with so many big talkable stories out there, ISIS, Ebola, Gaza, the Ice Bucket Challenge coming in almost over a fifth of the time. And that shows me a couple of things. Firstly, it was a massive awareness campaign that worked. And secondly, people want something funny. We want something light.
People are bored, man. Yeah. People have nothing to do. But this is what gets to me about the Ice Bucket Challenge and hashtag Bring Back Our Girls and all this sort of stuff. It's all nice and it's entertainment now. But we're talking about people's lives and we're talking about things that really matter. And do we really care? Does this really make a contribution?
Well, I don't believe it does. I believe it as an awareness campaign it does. But I believe if you're going to donate something, you don't need to chuck a bucket of ice over your head. Let's be fair here. And like Bring Back Our Girls to me is like a big bugbear for me. Because did it bring back the girls? It absolutely did not. And you had a whole bunch of celebrities behind it. But I mean, we had, for example, the other hashtags that came up that were quite interesting as well was the ISIS blackout. I mean, that came up 20% of the time against the James Foley incident. So people love a hashtag. The hashtags change all the time, makes it quite difficult to monitor what's happening from one minute to the next. But I mean, with ISIS Islamic State, it was just interesting to me how something so serious all of a sudden became something quite humorous.
Absolutely. But the scary thing, I think, for all of us is going forward, our rights will increasingly be infringed upon in the online space, and in some cases it will not be able to be policed. But, Tanya?
You can't police Twitter or social media. You can try, but there's just so many other ways to regenerate that message, you know?
Indeed it is. Well, thank you, Tanya, for joining us this morning. Katrine is going to wrap up today's program. Of course, Tanya will always be back. She'll be back maybe a little bit later this week, depending what happens, or next week, to give us a little insight into what you are on about in the online space. But it's still Women's Month, and Katrine comes up with a final contribution this morning.
Well, yes, recently South African women were honoured at the Women in Science and Technology Awards ceremony that took place last week. The awards are part of government's efforts to recognise and create incentives for women scientists and researchers whose achievements are an inspiration to the nation and young women. Professor Leila Patel and Professor Mari Poggenpoel, both from the University of Johannesburg, were among the top South African female scientists and researchers honoured at the awards. They join us today in studio. Welcome, ladies. Firstly, congratulations, and I want to start off with science and technology. For over the years, it's been seen as a very male-dominated area. Is that still the case today? Leila, I would like to start with you.
Yes, it is. We got our awards in the field of social sciences and the humanities. And I suppose that's an area where women are more involved in research. But certainly the opportunities are opening up for young women scientists in engineering and the natural sciences.
And Mari, is that your take on it as well? What are the challenges women face today in science and technology?
I think the challenges they face lies within the balance between work and personal lives, because you have to work very hard and focus to be able to produce and research and have outputs. So I think keeping all the balls in the air is quite a big thing.
Leila, your area, your research, it's all about social development, social welfare. Can you tell us a bit more about that and social welfare in South Africa in general?
You know, my research started out in the 1980s, and it started with us researched grassroots interventions to make a difference in people's lives. And I studied the grassroots activities of UDF and COSATU affiliates at the time, and looked at what that would say about a future welfare policy. And that work later shaped the white paper for social welfare. And I've continued to do research in this field for 30 years.
Now, social welfare in South Africa, is it heading in the right direction? Are we closing the poverty gap? Are we creating those opportunities?
We are, in some ways. We're making tremendous progress with social grants. Social assistance has a huge impact on poverty reduction and inequality. But despite that, we still have almost 50% of our population living in poverty, and that is one of the biggest challenges. Because poverty is a risk factor for so many other social conditions, for mental health problems, for poor school performance, for ill health, and for general well-being. So I do think that needs to take centre stage as we look ahead.
Then, Mari, your focus for the last 10 years has been on aggression in South Africa. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, we've conducted research in secondary schools, in other workplaces, and domestic violence. And the centre finding we found in all instances was that disrespect was at the root of aggression in our society.
Is South Africa an aggressive nation?
A very aggressive nation, I'm sorry to say.
Now, are we seeing it more amongst the youth or adults, or what is the root cause of this aggression?
As I say, I think disrespect and also role modelling of adults. I don't think there's a group that's less or more aggressive. The only distinction we can make is socioeconomic group. The lower socioeconomic group individuals show more physical aggression, and the higher socioeconomic group shows more psychological aggression. And I think the most dangerous aggression is the psychological aggression.
Now, just to wrap up, you guys are both ladies in this field dominated by men. What is your message to the young girls out there who want to pursue a career in science?
My message is find the dream for your life, focus, work hard, stay committed and enjoy it.
And Leila, if you'd like anything to add?
Achievable goals, I think, and being at it for a long period of time.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for joining us this morning and telling us about this. Eben, wrap us up.
Yeah, that we do. Thanks very much, Katrine. Are you concerned that we're one of the most aggressive nations? I certainly am. I think we need to change our behaviour. Keep it cordial, be nice to your neighbour. What happened to all that kind of thing? We live in a beautiful country. Anyhow, Newsroom has been broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park here in Johannesburg between 9 and 10 a.m. every weekday morning. We also stream live on YouTube right now as we speak, really, with our whole show available all the time on demand on our Facebook or our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel for that matter. You've been watching SABC News. This is Newsroom. We just love it in the morning.